Welcome back to another Valley Sports Plug Arizona Cardinals recap for Week 17. On January 1st, 2023, the Cardinals would open up the new year in Atlanta, taking on the Falcons. Unfortunately, in this back-and-forth battle of the backups matchup, it resulted in the Cardinals' sixth straight loss and a final score of 19-20 on a heartbreaking walk-off field goal by Atlanta kicker Younghoe Koo. And this makes the Cardinals now 4-12 on the season, looking to have the fourth pick in the draft if the season ended today. So let's take a look at how it all broke down and talk about it. So no Kyler Murray, no Colt McCoy, no Trace McSorley. So David Blough would get the start today, throwing 24 completions on 40 attempts, 222 yards, and a touchdown. That lone touchdown being received by Trey McBride, who had 7 receptions, 78 yards, and that touchdown. Marquise Brown would haul in 6 receptions for 61 yards. On the ground, James Conner carrying the brunt of the load, 16 carries for 79 yards, averaging 4.9 yards per carry. His longest, a 16-yard rush that he broke out. On the defensive side, just one lone sack today by J.J. Watt, who, although he announced his retirement, is not going to let up anytime soon, or at least for his last game next week. On the other end, we have Desmond Ridder getting the start for Atlanta at quarterback. He completed 19 passes on 26 attempts, 169 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. The Atlanta Falcons would have many receivers catching passes, but nobody too much of mention. They were mostly getting it done on the ground by their running backs, Tyler Algieri, I probably mispronounced that, who had 20 carries, 83 yards, and a touchdown. It seemed like they were just walking right up the gut, getting really whatever they wanted, especially in the red zone. Let's take a look at the scoring breakdown of today's game. Like I mentioned, a back-and-forth affair. Matt Prater would open it up with a field goal in the first, making it 3-0, giving the Cardinals the lead. In the second quarter, the Falcons would answer with running back Tyler Algier and a 5-yard run up the middle, making it 7-3. The Falcons would have the lead. Later on, about 3 minutes later, Trey McBride would get that very first career touchdown of his to take the lead for the Cardinals 10-7. Cordero Patterson would then have an answer with a touchdown of his own on a 5-yard rush, making it 14-10. And right before halftime, Matt Prater would knock in a 36-yard field goal to make it 13-14. In the third quarter, Matt Prater, the lone scorer of that quarter, a 36-yard field goal, making it 16-14. He was really feeling that range, 2 36-yard field goals and a 38-yard field goal. He would also have one more later on in the game, which was a 57-yard field goal, but not getting ahead of myself in the beginning of the fourth quarter. Younghoe Koo would make a 27-yarder, making it 16-17. That Matt Prater field goal I just mentioned would make it 19-17, and also that Younghoe Koo field goal, the 21-yarder, to seal the deal as time expired, making the final score 20-19 in Atlanta. So now I'll turn it over to VSP Tallman for his reaction on today's game.
Okay, it's my turn. Let's see. So, what a game. Props to David Blough. So,
Blah, blah.
blah, 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 boo, boo. If this game actually meant something, it would have been so upsetting. I mean, the block punt, that fourth down call where we got stopped in the backfield, that missed field goal, which I say missed field goal because we lost by a point, would have been really tough. I mean, I'd be super upset if we were, if it actually meant something, but it did not mean anything. Going in this game, I wanted them to lose, like I'm sure every other Cardinals fan did, so that we can get a good draft pick next year. And I was little optimistic about what David Blough could do. Extremely surprised by David Blough.
Blah.
Is it just me, or did you guys think that the play calling was way more aggressive? You see how many times he threw the ball downfield? It's like the start of the season, that never, ever happened. They were really aggressive with it. I mean, he impressed me. I sat there and I'm like, okay, Cardinals they're trying to tank right now. Let's start the practice squad guy who's been here for 6-7 weeks, and let's see what he can do, knowing that, hey, he's probably going to suck and we're going to lose. I was very impressed. I wouldn't be surprised if he makes the roster next year. I don't know. I swear, like, he's going to get another start next week, and let's see what he can do with it. Other than that, props to JJ. So happy for him that he got that sack. What was it? 6 seasons with 10 plus sacks. So good for him. That was awesome to see. Also, our buddy Trey McBride, the second round pick waster, he had a career day. Happy for him. He had that really bad. Well, you can't. No touchdowns bad. It just looked bad. But good for him. I think he had like 7 catches. I don't know if he said the stat, but he had like 7 catches, 75 yards. Had his career day. Good for him. Injuries, crazy, man. Trash can Robbie got hurt. Connor got banged up. What was it? Simmons and Collins both got banged up early on. So it's just so this season for the Cardinals. We saw more injuries to our key players. But hey, we lost. It's good. A loss right now is a win. I'll take it. Next week's going to be interesting. I don't know about you guys, but we're probably going to see very minimal starters starting. I'm sure that game is going to be pretty ugly, especially with the Niners winning today. They're going to have probably nothing to play for. So that game is going to be probably the worst game that we ever see. But hey, we're in a fight right now. Let's get that high pick. We need to draft Will Anderson. We need that second pick or a pick higher than the Bears. We need to get Will Anderson. He's going to be edge rusher out of Alabama, and we're going to need him so bad next year. He's going to be an absolute stud. So that's what we need to fight for, guys. And that's it.
Tallman, you nailed it. I mean, 100% just need to keep fighting, keep being competitive. It seems like if there is tanking in football, that might be happening a little bit with these guys being tested out, Hopkins out. The injuries, though, have just piled on. Some notable things is just, you did mention the play calling did seem a little bit more aggressive. Those shots downfield that Blough was taking, I think just a little overthrown at times. He did have some good looks, but he was stepping up in the pocket and looked confident, which is something we didn't see from Trace McSorley. So I'm with you. I wouldn't mind him taking that backup quarterback, maybe third or second, depending on where Colt McCoy stands, if he's coming back or not. They said it even on the broadcast, though. They're expecting the Cardinals to have a lot of turnover this offseason, and I think it's needed. I think they need to clean house. They need to get their ducks in a row and find out what this team is going to look like. I mean, Tallman, even yesterday, we were talking about just like the seriousness of this team. And I know you're on Hard Knocks and, you can't be 100% button up all the time. But when you got a guy freaking making waffles in the morning meeting, how serious is your team taking this? I liked what I saw from David Blough, but at the end of the day, he is a backup quarterback. He's not going to replace Kyler. I know whenever these guys come out hot, have a few good plays, we think, oh, maybe we'll have our quarterback. Maybe nobody really thinks that because Kyler's the guy. We paid him a lot of money. We got to stick with him for a while. But last two things before we go over to Michael Benjamin. One is that David Blough is now 0-6 in his career as a starter. That was 5 losses in Detroit and 1 loss here in Arizona. So further emphasizing the point that he is not our quarterback of the future. And second, Sean Payton was at State Farm Stadium to watch the Fiesta Bowl. So just saying, maybe he's testing out the facility. Maybe he got a little tour, got to see what the locker room looked like. Maybe Bidwell took him out to dinner. You don't know.
He did.
We'll continue to hear those rumblings. Sean Payton is Vegas's favorite to be the Arizona Cardinals coach next season. Things to keep an eye on, and be sure that we're going to be following that throughout the offseason. We got one more week left covering the Cardinals, so make sure you're still tuning in. But before we get out of here and wrap up today, let's go over to Michael Benjamin for his reaction to today's performance.
Yeah, first and foremost, hopefully they locked the doors at State Farm Stadium after the game and didn't let Sean Payton leave. Just lock him up for sure for next season, kick Cliff Kingsbury to the wayside, because that's where this team is at. We need a whole new, fresh restart. I mean, in regards specifically to this game, I did like what I saw from David Blough. His pocket presence was pretty good. He had better control of where the football was going. I mean, my goodness, I wouldn't even bet $5 on Trace McSorley to throw a back shoulder fade, but David Blough could do it. And he's not the next quarterback for the Cardinals, but he did exactly what we needed to do, stay competitive and end up losing this game. I think really my only points, what else is going to happen with this team in regards to things on the football field to put a disadvantage to themselves? We've seen it all season long, and just things like that block punt where they end up with the ball, inside the 10-yard line and it's one play touchdown. That's how you lose games, and that's why this team is going to end up probably 4-13, with a loss against the San Francisco 49ers next week. It'll be interesting to see who they play. It depends on seeding. I don't know if San Francisco is really fighting for the number 1 overall seed, but, Cardinals at this point are just trying guys out to see who might be on this roster next year. But the last thing I really have to say is it's funny, you know, Tallman had brought up before we started that we're fighting for positioning now. And it's such a contradictory statement to be fighting for a better draft pick, which means you have to lose games. And that's literally all we want this team to do down the stretch is lose. And they better lose next week, which is a hard thing to say going up against NFC West rival. But there's nothing to gain from a W next week, unfortunately. It's crazy to see where we've gone in 3 years to where we are now. But that's just the truth of the matter. So Cliff Kingsbury, go ahead and do your job for once. Do end arounds all game long. No first downs, and we'll all be happy.
Mike, that's a great point. I mean, leave it to Cliff Kingsbury to probably win that game. He does everything wrong. The guy does everything wrong. He wins when he shouldn't. He loses when he shouldn't. It's messed up, man. And I wouldn't doubt it. But I wanted to just bring up my last point and piggybacking off what you just said there, Mike. I think we were talking about it on the last Heat Check podcast live, where this Cardinals team just has so much talent. And that's why if you guys watched our year recap and even months and months ago when we were giving our predictions for the season, Tallman said 9-8 would be their record. And we were booing him, calling him a pessimist, because Mike and I expected double digits wins for this team. And now here we are going to get 4 or 5 wins if we're lucky. And honestly, I think we're even luckier if we only get 4 wins. But the last point I wanted to make in bringing that up is when you look at our opponent next week, the San Francisco 49ers, they're on their 3rd quarterback this year, and Brock Purdy is still getting it done. They expected to roll out Trey Lance, and yeah, Jimmy Garoppolo's no slouch, but the point is they're on Brock Purdy, and they're getting it done. I think he's 3-0, 4-0 as a starter. Another talented roster. Could have been the Cardinals, and we even had Kyler for most of the season. So what's our excuse, really? It just, for me, goes back to Cliff and Keim and the poor management, the poor leadership, and the lack of a true disciplined culture. I mean, we are the most penalized team in the NFL, and that strictly comes down to discipline. But that's all we have for you guys today. We'll be back here next week for your Week 18 recap, the final recap of the 2022-2023 season. I'm Chris Patrick with Michael Benjamin and VSP Tallman. We'll see you next time. Peace.